Welcome to Ansika IS Academy. This is the series of Tamil Nadu Board History 12th class, and this is chapter number 8, Educational and Social Reforms. Learning objectives of this chapter is: first, the language and educational policies of the British; second, the debates over the introduction of English education in India; third, introduction of social reforms in India; 4, legislation on women; 5, struggle against the caste system and the legislation relating to abolition of caste discrimination. Language and education policy. Initially, the East India Company did not evince any particular interest in matters of education, although the British had captured Bengal in 1757, yet the responsibility of imparting education remained only in Indian hands. The study of ancient texts written in Arabic, Persian, and Sanskrit still continued. In 1781, Warren Hastings established a madrasa in Calcutta to encourage the study of Muslim laws along with Arabic and Persian languages. The decade later in 1791, due to the sincere efforts of the British resident Jonathan Duncan, a Sanskrit college was established to promote the study of Hindu laws and philosophy in Banaras. Therefore, it must be contended that during the first 3 decades of 19th century, the development of education took place only through the traditional institutions. It is apparent form of government that church records that the state of Oriental learning at the time of the establishment of the company's rule in Bengal, there were about 80,000 traditional institutions of learning in Bengal alone, which means that there was at least one institution for every 400 people in that province. Different educational surveys of Madras, Bombay and Punjab also demonstrate similar facts. There was at least one school in every village of India at that time. The East India Company began to adopt a dual policy in the sphere of education. It discouraged the prevalent system of Oriental education and gave importance to Western education and English language. The Charter Act of 1830 adopted a provision to spend 1 lakh rupees per annum for the spread of education in India. Although there was a prolonged debate pertaining to education during the course of a general discussion on the Act of 1813 in the British Parliament, yet the matter continued to generate debate for the next 20 years. Consequently, not even a single penny out of the allocated funds could be spent on education. The contemporary British scholars were divided into two groups on the issue of development of education in India. One group, called the Orientalists, advocated the promotion of Oriental subjects through the Indian languages. The other group, called the Anglicists, argued the cause of Western sciences and literature in the medium of English language. In 1829, after assuming the office of the Governor-General of India, Lord William Bentinck emphasized on the medium of English language in Indian education. In the beginning of 1835, the 10 members of the General Committee of Public Instruction were clearly divided into two equal groups. 5 members, including the chairman of the committee, Lord Macaulay, were in favor of adopting English as medium of public instruction, whereas the other 5 were in favor of Oriental languages. The stalemate continued till February 1835, when the chairman of the committee, Lord Macaulay, announced his famous minute advocating the Anglicist point of view. Consequently, despite fierce opposition from all quarters, Bentinck wrote the resolution passed on 7th March 1835, which declared that henceforth government funds would be utilized for the promotion of Western literature and science through the medium of English language. In 1854, Sir Charles Wood sent a comprehensive dispatch as a grand plan on education, the establishment of departments of public instruction in 5 provinces, and introduction of the pattern of grants in aid to encourage private participation in the field of education were recommended. Besides, the dispatch also laid emphasis on the establishment of schools for technical education, teacher and women education. Over and above all these, the dispatch recommended the establishment of one university each in Calcutta, Bombay and Madras, on the model of London University. Consequently, within the next few years, the Indian education became rapidly westernized. Social policies and legislation. In the beginning, the British interest was limited to trade and earning profit from economic exploitation. Therefore, they did not evince any interest in taking the issue of social and religious reforms. They were apprehensive of interfering with the social and religious customs and institutions of the Indians because of the fear that they might lose trade advantage. Thus, they adopted the policy of extreme precaution and indifference towards social issues in India. The one the one reason why they indulged in criticizing the customs and traditions of India was to generate a feeling of inferiority complex among the Indians. However, in the mid 19th century, the social and religious movements launched in India attracted the attention of the company's administration towards the country's social evils. The propaganda carried out by the Christian missionaries also steered the minds of the educated Indians. Western thoughts and education and views expressed in different newspapers and magazines had their own impact. Some of the British administrators, like Lord William Bentinck, had envisaged personal interest in the matter. There were primarily two areas in which laws were enacted: laws pertaining to women emancipation and the caste system. Social laws concerning women. The condition of women by the time the British established their rule was not encouraging. Several evil practices such as the practice of sati, the Pradha system, child marriage, female infanticide, bride price, and polygamy had made their life quite miserable. The place of women had come to be confined to the four walls of her home. The doors of education had been shut for them. From economic point of view, also her status was miserable. There was no social and economic equality between a man and women. A Hindu woman was not entitled to inherit any property. Thus, by and large, she was completely dependent on men. During the 19th and 20th centuries, some laws were enacted with the sincere effort of social reformers, humanists, and some British administrators to improve the condition of women in Indian society. The first effort in this direction was the enactment of law against the practice of sati during the administration of Lord William Bentinck. Female infanticide. Female infanticide was another inhuman practice afflicting the 19th century Indian society. It was particularly in vogue in Rajputana, Punjab, and the northwestern provinces. Colonial Todd Johnson, Duncan Malcolm, and other British administrators have discussed about this evil custom in detail. Factors such as family pride, the fear of not finding a suitable mate for the girl child, and the hesitation to bend before the prospective in-laws were some of the major reasons responsible for this practice. Therefore, immediately after birth, the female infants were being killed either by feeding them with opium, or by strangulating, or by purposely neglecting them. Some laws were enacted against their practice against this practice in 1795, 1802, and 1804, and then in 1817. However, the practice could not be completely eradicated only through legal measures. Gradually, this evil practice came to be done away through education and public opinion. Widow remarriage. There are many historical evidences to suggest that widow remarriage enjoyed social sanction during ancient period in India. In course of time, the practice ceased to prevail, increasing the number of widows relaxed during the 19th century. Therefore, it became incumbent on the part of social reformers to make sincere efforts to popularize widow remarriage by writing in newspapers and contemporary journals. Prominent among these reformers were Raja Ram Mohan Rai and Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. They carried out large-scale campaigns in this regard, mainly through books, pamphlets, and petitions with scores of signatures. In July 1856, J.P. Grant, a member of the Governor General's Council, finally tabled a bill in support of the widow remarriage, which was passed on 13th July 1856 and came to be called the Widow Remarriage Act 1856. Child marriage. The practice of child marriage was another social stigma for the women. In November 1870, the Indian Reforms Association was started with the efforts of Keshav Chandra Sen, a general called Mahapap Bal Vivah Child Marriage, the Cordinal Sin, was also launched with the effort of PM Malabari to fight against child marriage in 1846. The minimum marriageable age for a girl was only 10 years. In 1891, through the enactment of the Age of Consent Act, this was raised to 12 years. In 1930, through the Sharda Act, the minimum age was raised to 14 years. After independence, the limit was raised to 18 years in 1978 per the system. Similarly, voices were raised against the practice of parda during the 19th and 20th century. The condition of women among the peasantry was relatively better in this respect. Parda was not so much prevalent in southern India. Through the large-scale participation of women in the national freedom movement, the system disappeared without any specific legislative measures taken against it. A struggle against caste system and related legislation. Next to the issue of women emancipation, the caste system became the second most important issue of social reforms. In fact, the system of caste had become the bane of Indian society. The caste system was primarily based on the fourfold divisions of society, viz. Brahmins, Kshatriya, Vaishyas and Shudras. On account of their degradation in their social status, the Shudras were subjected to all kinds of social discrimination. In the beginning of the 19th century, the castes of India had been split into innumerable subcastes on the basis of birth. In the meantime, a new social consciousness also dawned among the Indians. Abolition of untouchability became a major issue of the 19th century. Social and religious reform movements in the country. Mahatma Gandhi made the removal of untouchability a part of his constructive program. He brought out a paper, the Harijan, and also organized the Harijan Sevak Sabha. Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar dedicated his entire life for the welfare of the downtrodden. In Bombay, he formed the Bahishkrit Hitkarini Sabha in July 1924. For this purpose, later he also organized the Akhil Bharatiya Dalit Varg Sabha to fight against caste oppression. Jyotirao Phule in Western India and Sri Narayan Guru in Kerala respectively established the Satya Sodhak Samaj and Sri Narayan Dharma Pratipalna Yogam to include self-esteem among the downtrodden. In Madras Presidency, also the beginning of 20th century witnessed the rise of self-respect movement of Periyar EVR. In order to eradicate this evil practice, many other individual and institutional efforts were also made. These movements were directed mainly in removing the disabilities suffered by Harijans in regard to drawing of water from public wells, getting entry into temples and admission into the schools. Learning outcomes of this chapter is the system of education prevalent in India before the advent of British, the company's policy towards educational development in India, the debates between the Orientalists and the Anglicists relating to the introduction of Western education and the language of English, Macaulay's Minute on Education and the importance of Wood's Dispatch. Legislation relating to the abolition of social evils such as the practice of sati, female infanticide, the position of women in Indian society and the role of reformers in the emancipation of women and related legislation, the measures taken to the eradication of discrimination under the caste systems. And this is chapter number 8. Thanks for watching.